Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to the Accursed. Meet the family who has all the respect in the world for the dead, and practically zero for the living. Well, maybe that's an unfair rap. You see, tradition, shaking the right hands, or at least in the Phantom's case, is incanting the right rituals, speaking the right words, performing the correct ceremonies, is vital, because without structure, this family, the Poltergeists, are roiling chaos. There is no dead family more chaotic, more destructive, more monstrous than the Poltergeists. They're a nuclear reactor, and in good times they supply power, energy, warmth. They assist everyone around them. They perform a valuable service. You just don't want to be around them when the meltdown occurs. Don't mistake me. The Poltergeists aren't just homicidal sadists. They enjoy a good time, just like any of the dead. Dancing in particular, well, what they call dancing is more like a thrash. It's akin to standing convulsion. St. Vita's dance, or the dancing plague. They always have to cause a scene, and they always have to be at the centre of it via some means or other. And they enjoy confessionals too. It's always communal. When they wish to, I suppose, push their emotions out, it has to be in a communal fashion. They gather in groups as if they're all addicts in need of saving, and they tell their stories of horror and woe. But look closely if you happen to attend any of these meetings, because you won't see shades of shame, sorrow, and guilt racking their faces. You won't hear a tone of tragedy in their voice. You will notice the little smirk of pride, the glint in an eye that when they finish their story, they're telling it for the sake of the listeners, so that the person who hears them has just had a gauntlet laid down, so that the person who heard has just been told, listen to the heinous shit I've been up to. Now you do better. You do one better than that. So they supercharge fear. They supercharge fear in other poltergeists around them, but also among the living. And, to a degree, the accursed. And especially within their precious shattered spaces. There are few families that are so responsible for the creation of shattered spaces as the Poltergeists. Everyone has heard of a haunted house. Everyone has heard of the house at the end of the lane where this man killed his family and then himself, and now no one else will live there. Poltergeists fly to those locations like catnip. This is honey to them, and they go about perverting those spaces even further. I met the first ever poltergeist once, I should say. He claimed to be, anyway, and they do have a sense of ego about them, these dead. It was difficult to understand exactly what he was saying as he was speaking to me through the eternal screams of many of his victims. This poltergeist wasn't wandering around in the skin suit of the living, or indeed propping up a cadaver. No, he was part of a city's infrastructure. Drains, storm drains, tunnels, passages, a small part of the Allenstown metro. It's a small metro anyway in Allenstown. He had come to encompass all of it. It was one great labyrinth, a temple, if you like, dedicated to him, that he inhabited. And you know these places. These are the kinds of places that children, they will dare each other to spend a night down in the disused subway to see if they can do a little bit of urban exploration in the underground, to crawl down into the storm drain, and then just when they crawl down, their friends lock them in. The poltergeists adore the fear of children. There is no fear quite as pure as a little kiddywink being terrified lost in the dark in a maze. I can see why a poltergeist would be drawn to such a place. How many got lost down there and never returned? How many essentially became a part of this patriarch? When I spoke to him, he conveyed the old dead tale. You've probably heard of it. I've heard it many a time through one frame or other, that he and others like him were once living and powerful, indeed the most influential individuals in their part of the world. Some people think it's Greece, as in ancient Greece. I can't say either way, but there are certain connections. That he and a league of others, the other founding dead, were the most powerful individuals, philosophers, politicians, warriors, and they had everything they could ever possibly wish for. They had wealth, they had people, they had territory, but they were growing older and they knew that death was on the doorstep. So they wanted to find that great secret, the secret of immortality. So where did they go? Of course, they went to the oracle. There was a seer, maybe the one at Delphi, maybe not, but they went to this oracle and they wanted the answer. How do we live forever? How do we keep hold of our power forever? Of course, she would not yield this secret. Defiant woman, that oracle. These were powerful men and women. And I suppose that's an admirable quality, defiance. Now, I suspect you know the rest of the story, the whole be careful what you wish for curse that ultimately resulted in each of the dead family founders being so damned. But let's give special mention and attention to the Poltergeist founder, because this was the story he relayed to me, and it was fairly, I suppose, self-effacing. He claimed to have never laid a finger on this oracle. He told me again, and the voices of the damned who were speaking through him did muddy it a little, that he would never molest someone so pure and so powerful. He, in his life, was a fearmonger. He pried open the oracle's mind to find what she feared most. He knew that he could get the answer to immortality from her if only he could manipulate her fears. And he discovered that this oracle had no possessions that she feared losing. He found that she had no phobia of snakes, spiders, darkness, or rats. She was unafraid of torture as well, and in fact would withstand immeasurable physical pain and indignity, and would rather die than give up the gift that they sought. He discovered as well that his preferred method of extracting truths and gifts and subjugations, supplications from his subjects would not work on her, because she had no parents, she had no siblings, she had no children. She had no loved ones, and he so adored tormenting the loved ones of others because he knew that that was the perfect way of tweaking someone's guilt and making them speak, making them confess. He started feeling guilt himself. He started feeling shame. He wasn't fit for this task. He wasn't fit for anything. He couldn't find anything useful from this woman, and so our foundational poltergeist, what did he do? Well, he simply walked away, according to his tale. His weapon was fear, and she had none, so he had no arrows in his quiver. He allowed the founder of the Shades to trap her in miserable solitude and think about everything she had done wrong with her life. He allowed the eventual founder of the Mavens to love bomb her, occasionally giving her the gift of affection and then snatching it away just when she was seeing it as normal and desirable, and so forth. But he had slunk away into the darkness. The poltergeist patriarch, and bear in mind he wasn't that yet, realised he had no part to play in this grand tapestry. When the oracle finally expired, the first of the Zeds, I'm told, was the one to deliver the killing blow. It was on her last breath that she voiced the damnation that cursed all of them. Now, they were cursed in turn. This was not a simultaneous one. After all, we know that each of the dead families is different. They all have their own urges. And our poltergeist could see his erstwhile companions falling to their respective curses, one by one. At first, it was in quick succession. Then it slowed down. And he was last. He could see all of those, maybe he didn't care for them, but he certainly respected them. All of his peers steadily succumbing to their damnation, their damned immortality. And he convinced himself, he fell on hope, maybe he was being spared, maybe because he wasn't there when all these indignities were visited upon her, these outrages, that he would come away without a curse. Well, no, her curse reached him last, years after the others had fallen. You have lived your entire life in fear of this eventual doom, her voice said to him within his dreams, his nightmares. You are a being of terror, she said, afraid of the consequences for not having intervened for saving me. Afraid of the consequences of what might have happened if you had. You are a wretch, she said to him, so proud and yet so ashamed of the fear that you master and yet which subjugates you. You shall be dead and symbolic of nothing but fear in all of its aspects. Now, I refer to my meeting with the Poltergeist founder in the past tense. I refer to him in always in the past tense because I do not know where he is now. He's certainly not in Allenstown. I'm given to understand that whatever inhabits that labyrinth under the town now is not him. I don't know why he has moved on, where he has moved, but he is no longer there. This terror-filled patriarch has shifted to a new city. And you must admit that of all the family heads, one that lurks in the underground and just snatches up victims is hardly a noble pursuit when you compare it to something like the Ayres or the Reeves or one of these other great families. The Poltergeists seem almost quite, undignified. I hate to say it, sorry, Poltergeists, but your family head is not exactly waving a bright banner for you. Yes, they draw energy from the fear of others, and so they motivate others to feel immense terror. The methods can be anything from jump scares, but they don't actually favour jump scares. They prefer the steady build of suspense. It purifies, I suppose. You could say refines, that's the word. Refines the fear to make it more tasty. But they're not hungry. They don't drink the fear because they need it for sustenance. They take it because it's how they feel strongest. It is almost the difference between the need for a taboo substance to survive and the need to, shall we say, flex one's muscles, use one's power. They're not all bastards. I mean, it sounds that way, but they're not. They're not all bastards. They're not all cowards. They're not all sadists. Some enjoy relieving the living of their fears, emboldening them to do things that they otherwise would not hazard to try. You see, poltergeists believe, a lot of them anyhow, that fear is a necessary evil, and that it is better that fear is evoked by those who understand it and how to use it to the betterment of their fellow accursed, and maybe the living, but admittedly it's the living who usually suffer these torments. Well, who better than the poltergeists? They are intrinsically tied to fear. And so you will often find poltergeists in amusement parks, in therapists' offices, in confessionals, in homes for orphans and foster children. They don't all take pleasure in the ambient glow of fear, but they form part of a fear cycle, whether that part is instilling it and then taking it when their victims are primed, or taking it away and feeling good for having relieved others of their fears. Regardless, they see themselves as a natural part of life and unlife. I recall in the 1920s or 1930s, a time of popular revolution in certain parts of the world, a crew of poltergeists, I think there was a shade in there, maybe a black heart as well, travelling to all manner of cities, estates, and palaces, kingdoms. They were terrifying aristocrats, the people in power, the elder statesmen, and the money magnates into taking some rather dramatic, deadly falls, as it were, to level out the class and financial playing field. They're a group of anarcho-socialists of some strain. They used to call themselves the Scarlet Scarecrows, which was always a little fantabulous for me, but I suppose the Red Terror and Red Scare were being used for other things in the 1930s. So they needed something to set them apart. Anyway, these Scarlet Scarecrows, they were really quite effective at targeting the high and mighty. They preyed on people during the Wall Street crash. They were there during the Russian Revolution, and of course things started coming to a head when the heirs and the Sphinx finally started sharing notes and realizing that a lot of them were being targeted by these Scarlet Scarecrows, and so a crew from the other side was dispatched. And it was using the cover of the Spanish Civil War, in fact, that a colossal battle took place that saw, well, so far as I know, the original Scarlet Scarecrow's crew demolished. That's what I'm told, because the Scarlet Scarecrow crew in various forms has risen up again and again. It's like a banner that the poltergeists like to fly to say, look at us, we are raising our fists to power. We are trying to tear down the corrupt establishments, and the best way to do it is by fear. And there's a lot of shades who feel similar, although their methods differ. I always keep in mind what one of my favourite poltergeists, lovely is the wrong word, but a very, let's call her communicative poltergeist, a lady by the name of Zhao Shen. She told me, fear is healthy. Fear is necessary. Fear is what keeps the living alive. Humankind would not have survived its first encounters with wolves and lions were it not for fear. Humankind would not have survived the Cold War were it not for fear. We poltergeists may seem cruel, crude even, she said, but our curse makes humanity stronger. Were it not for us, she says, how would those soft pink morsels know when to flee and when to fight against monstrosities far worse than the dead? Maybe she has a point. Perhaps poltergeists are, despite their antisocial behaviour, to put it kindly, doing everyone a favour. It does trouble me, though. It does trouble me, though, how Zhao Chen insists on communicating with me from the form of a wooden effigy, its face a mask of porcelain, its mouth a permanent rictus. The only part of it that seems alive are the eyes. It's funny. She is most certainly one of the dead. But within that wooden effigy, behind that sleek white mask, and that smile that never moves, eyes that move with excitement, with energy. And I dare say that they develop even more excitement every time I just bleed a little bit of fear. I think she can tell when the people she's speaking to are afraid. And the more fear someone like me, any one of her audience feels, the more alive she feels. Maybe that's what the poltergeists want. Maybe if they can generate enough fear from the living and the accursed, they can live once again. Thank you very much for watching.